everybody. Welcome to the second official episode of the Chipman Brothers Tangent Podcast. Yeah, I think that title's working, right?
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I do. I'm Bob Chipman, sometimes known online as Movie Bob. With me is my brother Chris. How you doing,
Sometimes
Chris?
known as Taserface.
And as Chris has just indicated with a bit of a tease, we are coming at this, going to talk about the new film Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, which we just saw.
Volume 2.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which, and in a increasingly rare instance, is a movie that we both got to see when it was relatively new, last week when it was a new movie.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. And, you have already, if chances are, if you follow me online, you may have already seen my review of the film, which was very positive. So I want to start off and ask Chris, what were your thoughts about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
Well, first off, the original Guardians of the Galaxy it's a bit of out of left field, right? I mean, even with the whole Marvel Universe thing, it came around, right, not shortly after the Avengers pulled off what they were building up to do, right? Which is, okay, we're going to release a bunch of movies with obscure-ish, but superheroes people have heard before, and we're going to attempt to tie them all in one movie. And then they went and with no movie build-up, decided, you know what, we're going to go balls to the wall, and we're going to introduce a bunch of characters no one has ever heard of, even some people that actually read the comics. This is obscure land, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to introduce the whole team at once in one movie. And, by the way, we're going to hire the guy who started working with Lloyd Kaufman in Troma to pull the whole thing off. Because if Bedfellows were ever meant to be, it's the Walt Disney Company and the people that wrote The Toxic Avenger and Tromeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Right? It just still boggles my mind. And the other thing that boggles my mind is that Lloyd Kaufman is in both, or the first one at least. And he's a producer on both, which means he was in the room with Disney executives.
Yeah.
I mean, this man wrote a book where one of the titles of the chapter was The Joy of Colostomy Bags.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
What's that? Everything I ever needed to know about filmmaking I learned from The Toxic Avenger.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic fucking book.
Yeah.
But anyway,
co-written by James Gunn.
Yes. So Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I mean, I'm already a James Gunn fan. So I knew going into it that this would be something different. And it's, I mean, dare I say, both of them, this one probably more so, within the Marvel universe, is much edgier. You know what I mean? There's some darkness, some nastiness, some R-ratedness to the goings on. In both of these movies, which the other movies don't really have.
Do you think maybe the series gets away with a little more because they're so many of the characters are aliens and weird creatures?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Would you be able to show one of the ostensible good guys essentially, there's a sequence in this movie where three of the main characters between them jointly basically murder about 300 people.
Yes.
Give or take. In slow motion, and it's played as alternately a really funny scene and also a really holy shit, these are the coolest guys in the world kind of scene. And could you, I don't know that you could pull that off in the the Avengers or any of the others, because eventually you'd be saying, hey, wait a minute, why are they shooting people? Whereas here it's one of them is a raccoon, one of them is blue, and one of them is a little baby tree thing, so it's funny.
Well, right. I mean, it feels like it belongs in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
In the terms of, this is a movie you could definitely watch with your family, like dads and kids. This is going to be a big one, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But, our first introduction to Yondu, Michael Rooker's blue-skinned character, is basically post-coitus in a brothel, zipping his pants up. You know what I mean? Disney. Now, this is a Disney film, right? This kind of fucks with my head. But before delving too deep, with the tangents there, you asked what I thought of it, and this movie unfolded in front of me, and people might argue, oh, it's a slighter movie, it's a smaller movie, it's like Iron Man 2. There's not much going on, it's just character building, but it was fucking great character building. The movie had the balls to be slow. And I don't mean slow as in boring, I mean slow as in thematically. The musical score was used almost like in line with the feeling of the scene, whereas in the first one, it definitely gave you a feeling when they were using the music. But this one almost sets the stage. Like, you're supposed to be listening to the words of the song because they're telling you what's going on with the characters.
Yes, yes.
And I just thought it was, in my opinion, it's up there with some of the best sequels of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not as good as the first movie, but the first movie, there's not many things that are as good as it in the genre that it's in.
Yeah.
But this one is funnier than the first one, and this one is way deeper than the first one.
Yeah.
And it builds on character mythos and mythology that the first movie started. It's not like all of a sudden Iron Man's acting differently, or all of a sudden, the guy that was kind of edgy and didn't talk a lot in the first one now has this big arc. It's, no, we're looking for Peter Quill's dad, in this one. And that was a big plot point in the background of the first movie. And now we have Gamora and Nebula, and they are recognizing more and more and more so that they were both abused by Thanos. And it's not just that one of them was the fodder and the other one was the one getting all the praise. This was emotional and physical abuse in and of itself. And you learn more about Drax and his family life through him getting a lot more humor, but also a lot more depth. And I mean, then you get the third act, which I think we should go into at the end of the podcast. But man,
yeah, no, we can talk about spoilers. It's been a week.
I was just gonna say, we talked about Colossal on our last podcast, and Colossal and now this are the last two movies I've seen in a theater. And Colossal made me feel feelings that I wasn't ready to feel watching a movie. And it made me feel humor and funny and laughter at the same time that terrible things were happening on the screen. And here is a Marvel superhero sci-fi epic that it goes in a direction that, and it might not have affected everyone in the audience this way, but I literally had to take my 3D glasses off and not look at the screen because I was crying. And I'll admit that to the internet. I was crying for a good 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Where this movie ends up going. And like I said before, it's all in the music and what's going on screen. It's just brilliant when they got there. And I want to talk about that more, but set the stage. I mean, it might not be a perfect movie, but it's my favorite I've seen this year.
Wow, yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
And that Colossal and this probably tied Lego Batman in a close second. That's my take for a quick flip.
Well, having I saw it earlier in the week, before we saw it together on the Sunday of the weekend that it came out. And my initial impression was, that I would have said, okay, this is about as good as the first one, but it feels less new because it is less new.
Right.
And like the things that were initially like surprising in the first one, where it's like, hey, okay, we made a crazy space movie that's all set to, 1970s AM rock,
right.
It's a mom rock action movie, which is just bizarre. But it's all kind of awesome. On seeing it the second time, my impression is I think it's better than the first one. I do.
Okay. See, I'll need to see it a second time.
Yeah, I think the second, because as tends to happen with the Marvel movies, I really do end up wishing that I can watch them twice before I review them, which is not always possible, because a lot of the time, and it's a function of watching these movies now, is like the first time with it, because I know I have to do the review, I'm both watching up for, okay, what do I think about this? What am I going to say? What am I going to write? And also, let me look out for Marvel Universe business that is going to need to inform all of the news writing and reporting for the next, couple months of my life.
Right.
So, the second time when I can just like watch what the movie's about, I'm thinking like, wow, this is really strong thematically. Which the first one is strong thematically too, but in that one it's doing an easier thematic thing. It's like, okay, it's about family. There you go.
Well, and
And
they
this one is much more specifically about other things and deeper things within that.
well the first movie has to do an entire 6 movies worth of character introduction
Yeah.
in one film, and they handle that by having each character and its arc play into the family theme. So they give you a story too, but it kind of takes till like the second or third act to kind of get to that delivery. And not lazily, but luckily, everyone's kind of tied together by the same villains. In the first movie, so that kind of helps. Um,
Hmm.
but the way I felt the whole time watching this, you get like for instance, these movies get criticized, and rightfully so, a lot of the times for feeling like trailers for the next big team up movie.
Yeah.
You've got uh, the second Thor movie is a big offender in that category. But
Mm.
when I saw the Avengers in the theater for the first time, it felt like nothing needed to come after it. It was building up to a lot, but everything gelled together into a full theme and a full, okay, these guys are working together now and I see how they play. It felt very fresh. None of the other movies leading up to the Avengers felt like the Avengers,
Mm.
and
Mm.
you get like an Iron Man 3, which is directly affected by the Avengers, but feels like its own thing. Where it goes character wise, thematically, was very similar to where Guardians of the Galaxy 2 goes. And then the original Guardians of the Galaxy didn't feel like a trailer for anything else either. But it had to do all of the work they did in so many movies in one. And it takes, again, our, NC-17 rated, body horror and disgusting, gross James Gunn, who
Mm-hmm.
apparently is really, really good at writing characters. He's proven. Um,
Mm-hmm.
really deep, emotional characters in that, in your space opera set to 1970s mum rock.
Yeah.
So, the second movie, it took that brand and just said, I'm going to tell you a story in that world, and it's a full story instead of trying to tie in with, there was a mention of Infinity Stones maybe once,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think the reactions of some people, especially the first reaction, seeing it the first time, of it maybe being a weaker story-wise movie, I think it's because they're not getting all that other filler that they usually get, right?
Well, it's also markedly different from the first one in that the first movie is very much a travel movie.
Mm-hmm.
The first movie, one of the cool things that is in it is
How
that
big the galaxy is.
Yeah, it's constantly moving. They're constantly going. Like almost every major scene takes place on a different planet and a new location and a whole different looking thing. Whereas this one, they basically go to like 2 or 3 places, a couple of which we've already been to in terms of like the Ravager ship, and yeah, okay, so the one place we've been to before is the Ravager ship, and the other one is like a little bit on the Forest Planet, a little bit with the Sovereign, and a lot on Ego.
Which, yeah, in yes.
Yeah,
And I like that we got some Earth too. I mean,
yeah,
I know that that's kind of the Avengers and everything else's territory, but I like
yeah,
that we got to go to Earth, but you didn't see Iron Man flying around in the background.
yeah.
You know
Which people are bitching about.
why?
Well, because it's the same thing in all of these movies. Is that and I understand. Look, I still really enjoy the magic trick aspect of this Marvel thing where they go to a different place and it's like, oh hey, Captain America's also out there. Like, I don't need to be reminded of it constantly, but I understand that some people like to be in there where there's a lot of business on the internet about how come we don't see Iron Man flying in to fight the Blob.
Well,
you know
I bet we would. The movie just doesn't choose to focus on that.
Yeah, well, and it has the plot reason of it's in the middle of nowhere, and the
Oh,
Avengers
right.
mostly
Is his
operating in the
jurisdiction
cities.
really a Dairy Queen in East Bum Midwest?
Yeah,
Right.
right. That's supposed to be that's in Missouri, right?
I think
Is
so.
that is it?
I
That was
forget exactly.
I feel like so because it feels very specific because I think that's where James Gunn is from,
That makes sense.
and the the AM radio type music that's on is very specifically sort of songs that were big in the midpoint of the United States in the late 1970s.
That someone like Peter Quill would call the best American song ever written.
Right? Yeah.
And have his dad slap him in the face with how wrong and gross that is when you think about the actual context of the song and it being his
Yeah.
mom's favorite song. That is just fucking brutal.
Yeah, that's a yeah. So this is like the spoiler business. So like let's for those of you who have not seen the movie but are listening anyway because you don't care about spoilers, let's the original Guardians of the Galaxy, our ending involves Peter Quill, Star-Lord, finding out that one of the reasons he was able to survive holding an Infinity Stone is that his father, whom he never knew, is some kind of outer space being.
Yes.
Yeah,
From the stars, his mother said.
Yeah. His mother, who died of brain cancer, would only ever tell people that the absentee father of her kid was a man from the stars. Which it
David Bowie.
Watching these movies, you sort of like know the minute that comes in. It's just kind of like, okay, all right, that's going to be important later because nothing's in here by accident. These are all very expensive. So in the sequel, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the new information that we find is that after a lot of waiting of everyone on the internet spending a year going, oh, who is Star-Lord's father going to be? And thinking it's going to be every cosmic character in the Marvel Universe, the answer turns out to be Ego the Living Planet.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, which is, again for... This is one of the things that's nifty about the adaptations of these movies is these are really expensive movies being made out of stuff that was written for like 11-year-olds, and 90% of the big weird sci-fi ideas in this stuff are so big and weird because it was a bunch of guys trying to meet a deadline coming up with something that sounded new and interesting enough to shove on a cover.
Right.
So, in the comics, Ego, the Living Planet, is literally just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, like, a planet had a face and it, like, bit things? That's pretty much it for Ego, the Living Planet in the comics. It's just weird and cool.
And let's just say right now,
yeah,
before going into how crazy and deep they get with all that, for everybody listening that wants to know, for anyone that's a Fantastic Four fan and wonders why their big baddie doesn't get to look exactly like you expect him to, don't worry. Ego the Living Planet is at one point a giant planet with a fucking face on it.
Yeah, right.
And I was applauding that.
Yeah, I was really glad. In this version, we mainly encounter Ego in the form of Kurt Russell.
That's really important, though.
Yeah. It's there. This isn't like when they turn Galactus into a cloud because they're afraid of it being weird.
No, he's much more great and lovable and awesome and fucking awful because he's Kurt Russell showing up as a human.
Yeah, right. Because the idea in this one is that Ego, since he also made in the comics, Ego flies through space and goes to other galaxies and stuff. In this version, it is the living planet. It is a planet that is actually the protective shell of like a brain, basically, that is like a space creature that is obsessed with its own existence.
Right.
And it has created avatars of itself that look like Kurt Russell, because why wouldn't you?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, Bob, he has a penis. Because Drax really wanted to
know. So they end up going to Ego, introduces himself as Peter's father, informs him that he is a Celestial, which is important because this is the first time anything in Marvel has actually called itself a Celestial,
right.
Which means God.
With a lowercase g.
Lowercase g, right.
Small g.
Yeah. That's this is some real Jack Kirby business that we're getting into now, and informs him that he is a god, that Peter is half god, and that he would like him to join him to be part of the living planet and help fulfill some vaguely defined business that he wants to take care of. And when you they didn't hide the fact that they were going to meet Peter Quill's father, and this is who it was going to be in the trailers.
Oh,
Um,
but they hid what was going
they,
on.
yeah, well, because when you first see this, you're thinking, oh, okay, this is the logical place you go to for a sequel, because the first movie is all about, Peter is an orphan and he finds a family of his own with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, the quote-unquote biological family comes back in, and the question is he going to be part of which family is more the family? It's the logical next place to go with a sequel and these set of characters.
Well, and
You know,
it's also a multi-layered family, right? Because with the Guardians of the Galaxy, you're leaving out the Ravagers. And
yes,
that's a
yes,
very important part before explaining what Ego's big plan is.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
is
the
that it turns out Ego
yeah,
fathered Peter Quill,
yeah,
and because he has to return to his home planet to stay energized, because that's where his whole energy source comes from,
right,
um, basically returning to himself, right?
yeah,
He sent Yondu and the Ravagers back to retrieve his son.
yeah,
And you start thinking, and this is where the questioning comes in, well, why didn't you just come? And the
mm-hmm.
answer
Yeah,
initially is, I couldn't return to my wife or to your mother because I knew I would stay and I had bigger business to attend to.
right, and also he couldn't bear to see Meredith Quill dying on
Right.
Earth,
And
and
this is
is
and this
his
is what
answer
you're told
to Storm.
initially, and because Kurt Russell is so damn good at
Yeah,
being this fun-loving dad. I mean, when he starts showing Peter the power that he shares because he has the blood of a celestial in him,
yeah,
they make a little orb and play catch with it. And I
yeah.
was a blubbering
That's
mess
something.
already.
Mm,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Just over this, you have a movie with daddy issues or strong emotional ties with dads, like Real Steel, for instance. That movie turned
yeah.
me into a big mess too. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but so you learn a lot more about Yondu. I mean, Michael Rooker is already fucking awesome, right? But in
yeah,
the first movie, he's kind of like the less bad guy, right?
yeah,
He's
yeah.
chasing after Peter, but they kind of have this anti-hero hero thing going on where he's not really that bad of a guy. He's just rough around the edges.
Right.
Well, in this one, again, he's hired to chase him down, but you find
Mm-hmm.
out through all the interaction that, you get well, why did we keep him instead of returning him to Ego? This was the whole reason why Ego never found Peter till now, is because
Mm-hmm.
Yondu was hiding him from him. This is what
Yeah.
we're told. And Yondu always puts off oh, well, he was really small and easy to, steal stuff.
Good for thieving.
Good for thieving. But you
Yeah.
realize as you're going that no, Yondu actually gives a shit, right? Or else he would have killed him, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out he got kicked out of being a Ravager
Yeah.
because of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he gave up his greatness for Peter, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, leaving out this new guy. I mean, Yondu may have beat him and been kind of an ass, but he's kind of his real dad. When it comes up to who makes you who you are.
Just for the point, because I don't want a million people dwelling on the correction here, is that he got kicked out for making a deal with Ego to go and pick up.
Right.
Sorry.
To
He got, the idea here is that Ego has had more than one kid.
Well, we haven't
is
blown
part,
that part
is part
yet,
of it.
but yes.
Well, no, but it's that they drop that before they drop anything else. Is that Yondu was hired by Ego to go out and find his offspring, and that the Ravagers, who are pirates, are generally not involved in that trade.
Right.
And that he has been thrown out of being part of like the pirate guild for the most part.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Good correction.
Yeah. So, well, no, just because that becomes an element later on, is that he did that, but then he didn't bring Peter to Yondu, whereas he had brought previous candidates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where things get odd.
Right. So, and again, your last chance to turn back for the spoilers. It turns out, that this big kind of vaguely threatening sounding character is in fact the bad guy.
Yes, and he shows Peter in like Stations of the Cross by way of Apple Museum exhibit.
Yeah.
All of the cool things he's done. So he shows
Right.
him meeting Peter's mother, and it's a nice, sweet thing. He
Yeah.
shows, and then he says, and I went out looking for life.
Yeah.
And he says he found life. And then later the reveal is I found life, and it was disappointing.
Yeah. This is like I kind of had like the sense of, knowing from the comics, Ego is a bad guy, and that this is.
Yeah, but Russell made
Yeah.
you want to like him so much.
Yeah, I kind of thought, okay, something else is going on here. But once that comes down and like everything about this kind of clicked in, and I was like, oh shit, because like this now I get, because like again in the comics, Ego is called Ego because it sounds cool,
Yes.
right? Whereas in the movie, they pretty much, this seems like the easiest leap to make is that he actually is like Ego, like the embodiment of Ego. He has literally created himself out of nothing.
And what's interesting is what he
Yeah.
says. He creates what he thinks sentient life would be
Yeah.
before meeting sentient life,
Yeah.
and happens to make it look like Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
which is kind of an interesting little theological thing in and of itself. So the whose
Yeah.
image is what. And
Yeah.
then when he actually ends up finding the real life that he embodied and first
Yeah.
recognizes that, hey, I was right, this is how it would be, then it's
Yeah.
like, you know what? No, that's not good enough for me.
Yeah. So this is like, so we what we discover is, and it's already been like, dropped that Ego has, in other places he's gone, that he's left these like plant things on the planet, which seems like a benevolent gesture, that he's like, oh, I'm going to leave this cool thing here.
Right.
And what we basically land on is that he's basically a god as a colonial conqueror.
Yes.
Because he's gone out and, went looking for, wow, I am life. I need to find other life. When he finds life, he decides,
He's better than it.
yeah, I'm, the perfection that I made that is me is so much better than all of this other junk in the universe. So his big plan is that he is going to use his power to turn those plant things on all over the universe and just subsume everything into him. That
Right.
he'll be Ego the universe instead of Ego just the one planet. And he needs a little bit more power to do it, so he went out and seduced women on all the different planets to try and make more Celestials.
Yeah.
And he's been, as of late, collecting all of the offspring that he went out and made, and so far none of them also turned out to be Celestials except for Peter, which means they're all dead.
Yeah. Brutally
Yeah.
murdered. Or as he
Yeah,
says it, they didn't feel a thing.
Yeah, he's he's a mass murdering, colonialist god, and and also he killed Meredith Quill.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So we're sitting there,
Yeah, right.
Okay, and I'm already dealing with the kick in the balls of seemingly pretty cool father figure, basically reveals that he's a prick, and what's great about these movies, and this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, is the Marvel menace, the nondescript, swarm of enemy villain menace is in this movie in the form of the Sovereign. And even the Sovereign, which we can talk about after we go through Ego a little bit, because they're a cool villain in and of themselves, have a lot more going on under the surface, right? But they're the quintessential, this is the thing that we're going to have swarms of villains chasing you around for the movie. But Ego, again, has this big Marvel movie kind of nondescript, and my plan is to take over every planet with myself. And, you get big special effects sequence of this orb of goo coming out of those plants and destroying everything. But what sets this one apart is exactly what you just said. Oh, and by the way, Peter, your mother, who I claim to have loved, Brandy, she was a fine girl. What a good wife she would be. My life, my love, my lady is the sea. Never heard that song said in such a way that made it sound so disgusting as when Kurt Russell says that later in the movie.
Yeah.
But in and of itself, he has to tell Peter, and to make sure I didn't go back and get seduced into being just one of these people that disappointed me. That tumor, I put that in her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And my wife is sitting next to me and she goes, watch, he's the one that did it. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way they're going to go that dark. They've already kicked us enough in the balls.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
Great job.
I kind of figured that was there. Like once it becomes clear that Ego is bad, which the movie does not play bullshit. He acts weird from the
He
beginning.
does act weird, but they
Yeah,
keep, and everyone's suspicious of him, but they do a good job of kind of showing you the hand, but making you kind of almost hope, because they're playing up the whole thing that Peter's other father figure Yondu was a dick to him. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So you kind of want him to have something good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as it comes to this, I kind of figured that, once it's like, okay, all right, so in some way he's also at fault for what happened to Peter's mother, because otherwise, what is going to be the thing that turns Peter around to good?
All right.
That gets him around there. Like, it makes sense there, but the idea that he did it himself, not necessarily because, out of malice, but because, yes, I actually did fall in love and decided this thing that I need to do is more important.
Right, I can't control myself. Work's more important than this.
Right, yeah. This is, that is some,
Yeah.
yeah, it's dark, but it's also, it makes perfect sense with what we know about this character. And, so what I want to ask is Ego the top Marvel villain now?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so as well.
He's the most well written, acted, and backed up with substance villain as a character.
Yeah.
And it's because they gave him a human body, right? I mean, it just being a big talking world. I mean, what's it called there? Doctor Strange did a really good job of just having a couple of bonkers ass villains that I'm impressed they put on screen as well as they did. But they're kind of secondary to how cool Doctor Strange is. You know what I mean?
Right. That movie's is here's
gimmick,
how all the stuff works.
Yeah, that movie's gimmick is that could we really pull off the look and feel and weirdness of this fucker? Kind of like the first Guardians was, right? So the villains there, they're kind of more one-note Marvel villains that just happen to look and do really cool things.
Mm-hmm.
Ego, we could have a whole movie with that guy, or we could have anyway, but Peter beat the living fuck out of him. So
yeah, and it's such a in some ways it's almost like an answer to a lot of some of the criticism that was had of Star-Lord as a character in the first movie, that we're kind of going back to, this kind of this guy who's made himself into a this icon of this kind of old-fashioned doesn't give a fuck masculinity.
Right.
And then we meet up with Ego, who at first seems like, yeah, I am everything that is awesome about that, and then is also even more of everything that is absolutely toxic about that. And, they choose to do this basically by building, these movies are all about their music, and they build so much, like you said, about around the song Brandy, which is a great song. Like, they're right.
It is really, a great song.
Brandy is a terrific song. But, it's also one of the hundreds of thousands of songs, especially in the 70s, that seem to exist in, soft rock music, where the theme is the guy musician writing the song, giving a really, really romantic justification of why he can't settle down and why he is like an awesome loner that has to go wander the world and fuck everyone who gets close to me. And you just, it's basically a song that's all about how these musicians, because they are these awesome, creative, world-traveling guys, that it's okay that they pump and dump women. That it's like, yeah, look, yes, I love you, I care about you, but, I'm a man of the road or something. And, it kind of turns that whole thing around into this really dark criticism of that whole attitude behind that by, reminding you, yes, actually guys who have this kind of attitude about things, they're dicks. They might be cool, but they're dicks.
Well, and you're right, and it's going to set up Peter as a character so much more because, not to spoil much else, but, we're talking about it. Peter's actual only basis as a father figure in Yondu, who sacrifices himself for Peter, to
Right.
basically get him off of Ego while Ego's exploding, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
you know, and they don't really get a chance to talk. And
No.
that's what I think is great, right? This is going to define Peter Quill for the rest of the cinematic universe that he exists in, because
Yeah.
the person that made him capable of being so damn good at what he does,
Mm-hmm.
good or not, or just lucky, but he is Yondu, right? I mean, he's a Ravager with a heart. That's what Yondu shows you that he is. But he was also his dad without really knowing his dad, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Peter's whole thing for the whole first movie is that he'll screw anything that walks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, but now this whole movie is about him actually chasing Gamora, right, and actually
Yeah.
pulling it off. It would seem maybe by near the end, right? But
Mm-hmm.
again,
Yeah.
the movie doesn't have to give you like a romantic payoff. It's just words
Mm-hmm.
and gestures and smiles. But it'll be really interesting to see where they go with the character, because he loses both his dads as quickly as he had him, and he never even really knew that. It took Yondu had to give up his life and told everybody else how much he cared, or at least people figured it out, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you've
Mm-hmm.
got James Gunn's brother Sean, um, given way more of a character, and this is Kraglin,
Yes.
right? Who is basically Yondu's son as well. In that
Yeah.
he's the only one that was willing to stand up for him during the whole taking over of the Ravagers by Taserface. Yeah, which is a great joke in and of itself. Um,
Yeah.
but with Peter giving him the repaired dart at Yondu's funeral right at the end is just such a cool moment that these movies don't usually get,
Mm-hmm.
without it feeling forced. And so it'll be really interesting to see, where they go with Peter. And, with that, the movie, right, it's not just about Peter finding his dad. We said with Gamora and Nebula, there's way more to that. The whole movie's about, abusive family relationships and dealing
Yeah.
with them.
Right.
Right, we've got Yondu and all the Ravagers basically, but him and Kraglin, and then you've got Drax emoting more about his wife and daughters, or
Mm-hmm.
was it daughters or daughter?
I believe daughters. I believe he has the comic book Drax, who's a completely different character, has at least two kids. So I think it's wife and daughters.
Okay, and
Yeah.
hearing him, um, he talked a bit more, but it's when the Mantis,
Yes.
the empath, touches
Mm-hmm.
him, and he's still got a smile on his face, meaning that he's completely pushed this inside, right?
Yeah.
And just the way she reacts to, hearing, just feeling his feelings about that in that moment tells you
Yeah.
so much. And can I say, all of the great comic relief, a majority of it in this movie came from Drax, who should be the least
Yeah.
funny character.
Well,
Right?
but but Drax is fun though because it's a character with no guile.
Right, and it
Yeah.
so many great jokes. And then back to the family thing, we learn a lot more about Rocket. And Rocket,
Yes.
he's on the outs with everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just his character in and of itself, right? And God, finally a Hollywood movie that got the word trash panda in somewhere, right? That was pretty fantastic. Internet memes by way of weird sci-fi movie. Anyway, but his little bit with Yondu, we're the same person, or we're the same being, we're the same.
Yeah.
Like you see a lot of that, and this it's layered throughout. Whereas the first movie, yeah, there was a lot of character development, but this one fleshed everybody out. It didn't leave one person untouched and unadded to. Even little adorable baby Groot,
Yeah.
which was just wonderful. Having a toddler, that the opening credits of this movie have an entire, your big like Avengers style opening Marvel action scene to let you know they're still kicking ass. All happens in the background, out of focus, while baby Groot dances. And just the reaction to all of them, oh hi, like stopping during the it I don't know if anyone else listening has a kid, but it was perfect. It was
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, it was great. I like. I was worried whenever these things start adding, like, it becomes like a sequel. Okay, we need to add more characters. You have to wonder, okay, because eventually you'll find one that doesn't work, and they really only add like one new person to the permanent cast in Mantis.
Right.
Yeah, Pomme Clemtif, I believe is how you pronounce that name. I think she's French.
She's great.
Yeah, she's great because at first it seems like this is a way to do Drax again,
Right.
because now that Drax is part of this team and has been part of it for a couple of years now, he's evolved a little bit as a character. Like they're still keeping to the central gag that his species is incapable of processing metaphor.
Right.
They take everything completely literally, and Mantis. It's unclear if she's unable to process metaphor, but she's never had to. So it's another alien character whose shtick is that they don't process information the same way as in humans we would call them both neuroatypical.
Yes.
Right. It's Drax in the first movie, it's been compared to a positive depiction of autism. I'm not sure how much weight that carries, but it's interesting. And so they pretty much they put these two characters in what's a much weightier movie.
Yes.
Because even before we know that ego is bad, like the stuff with Peter is, in the first movie, he's like detached from stuff because he's not dealing with shit, and he's like the fun character. In this one, he's doing nothing but deal with his shit, and it's a lot heavier.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. He doesn't really have as much of a chance to be fun in this one. The fun goes to Yondu and Rocket running around having their Peter Quill moment. Killing everybody on the Ravager ship.
Yeah, I was really worried that they were going to run out their own joke with the music, because all of these things that, like, in the first movie it was just such a novel thing. Whenever a movie decides, what, let's build the sonic wall of this movie around a particular genre or a particular set of songs, and it can just feel so odd.
Yeah.
Like the Disney Robin Hood.
Yes.
Yeah, what's odd about what's fun for people who haven't seen the Disney Robin Hood, what's interesting about that movie is it's a movie that ostensibly takes place in the Disney animal version of medieval England, but the character voices and all of the music are southwestern United States bluegrass.
Yeah, it's really odd. It's one of the
works.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites, actually. I love that one.
Yeah, it's and in this one it's the same thing. It's one thing to go with, okay, yeah, 70s rock is fun, but they keep it very specifically to sort of laid back. None of it is disco. There's no like Zeppelin is never on the soundtrack here because that's more of a jock rock thing.
Right.
This is very much what would be called because these are supposed to be songs that Peter Quill has inherited from his mother, and they seem like mom rock from that era.
And that's what makes it work, is that the soundtrack is a character. The soundtrack is, we get to tap into Peter's mom. I mean, the opening of this movie is Peter's mom and Ego, before we know he's Ego, listening to Brandy and driving around, right? And that song is so happy during that sequence.
Yeah.
And it's cool that the songs can grow as a character throughout the movie. And that's not easy to do. I mean, the song wasn't written for your damn movie. You know what I mean? And that's what's super cool, is they feel like they were.
Yeah.
They feel like the movie, like, actually, it's not that it just went, it's like when Tarantino uses music, It doesn't sound like he just went out and grabbed it because he thought it sounded good in the scene. It sounds like he asked someone to write it for the movie. Like, I need this scene to feel like this, not the other way around. And that's not an easy thing to pull off with already existing music.
Yeah. Would you ever have thought that Come a Little Bit Closer should be a slow motion action scene song?
Exactly.
That's not typically a song that you'd associate with this guy is the man kind of scene, but that's what it becomes here.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great moment. I thought this it's a hell hell of a. I mean, we could probably do another hour and a half on this one, but I know
I
that
think
y'all.
time, like
Yeah.
you said, and it's not going to be a long period of time. I think a short period of time. I think people that saw this and, said, okay, yeah, no, it was good. It hit me emotionally in the right spots, but it was kind of like Iron Man 2, and we can just throw it to the side. And
Yeah.
I think when they see it on DVD,
Oh yeah.
the movie's just going to explode.
Oh yeah. Even more so than the first one. Like this, because this does have. This is another thing that even when I was only at about a 3 stars out of 4 about it when first seeing it, a thing that I super appreciated about it was here is the sequel to a big movie in this big action franchise that in some ways goes bigger because the finale of this one they're fighting a giant planet.
But it
You know
feels
they're
so much more
yeah.
personable.
Yeah, it's a more intimate movie, it's smaller, and that they take for the sequel and say, you know what, we're confident enough in this that we don't need to go and change it up and visit like a dozen new planets and introduce a billion new characters. We've got our guys, we're going to put them somewhere interesting and see what happens here.
Right. And I mean, and
Yeah.
the fact that they spent $200 million on that,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, and it doesn't feel like a waste.
Mm.
I cared so much about what was going on in this, and I
Yeah.
didn't expect to. I expected to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean it, but you, the first movie felt organic.
Yes.
It felt like the idea was fully fleshed out, and it's really difficult to do that again because you're
Yeah.
no matter what going to try to copy what worked in the first one and get rid of the stuff that didn't. And this movie instead took those characters and stuck them into something different.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't try to make the same movie, but it kept the same characters. And like you said, we could talk forever. I want to add one cool thing. We were talking about the Sovereign, and we'll probably do a little spoilery things about the end, but
Yeah.
I loved that they were so advanced that they flew drone ships, and it was like a freaking video game. And when there
Yeah.
was one of them left during the action sequences, they had all the other Sovereign there cheering them on, like a little 8-year-old beating, Donkey Kong or Mortal Kombat for the first time in a arcade. And when he died, they all walk away with their arms folded. You suck.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just loved that. And it had video game sounds. So you have these big, huge, like George Lucas Star Wars epic space battles with almost too much going on. But that's what I
Yeah.
like about these is that's kind of part of the joke,
Right.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost too much going on, but you can still enjoy it. But
Right.
then they break it through to basically the space equivalent of a cathode ray tube TV, like to see most of the scene with bleep bleep bloop bloop bleep bleep doodaloo,
Mm-hmm.
like playing over it. And I'm like, this is hilarious. Like I was dying. I almost couldn't pay attention. I was laughing so hard at how silly that was, but it worked.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, it's really it's going to be so bizarre potentially because the next time we're going to see the Guardians is they will be in Avengers Infinity War,
Right.
which on one level can't wait to see that. It's going to be so cool to see these characters interacting with the other Marvel characters, but it is going to probably be so tonally odd.
Yes.
Because these characters, like James Gunn is involved, obviously, he's a big shot in the Marvel movies now. He's planning out a bunch of the spin-offs and such, but it's going to be...
Go ahead.
Because so much of this, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, they took the name of the comic, and that was pretty much it, and the script that they had that called for this arrangement of characters was from a writer who pitched it, and then Nicole Perlman, and that's the pitch that got bought, and when they brought James Gunn on, he rewrote the movie further to his own sensibilities.
Which are odd and great.
Right, and, so these characters, more so than anything else in the Marvel movies, because most of them are drastically rewritten from their comics origins. The team is, the universe is. They've pretty much allowed him to make a side project of the Marvel universe that belongs only to him. And in Avengers Infinity War, we're going to see a certain amount of that presumably, interpreted through a completely different set of filmmakers in the oh shoot, it's late and I had a beer, so I am blowing out the
Russo brothers.
The Russo brothers who make the Avengers movies now, who are equally awesome, but have such a different aesthetic and a different, type of thing that they do. It's going to be so interesting to see these characters, interpreted by other
Well,
filmmakers.
and it's an interesting point you made there about the Russo brothers, because remember that, the original Avengers,
Mm-hmm.
no one had ever done that before. And
Yeah.
you get Joss Whedon to come in and do it, and that movie was very much a Joss Whedon movie. It was silly and light and still heavy and dark when it needed to be. But it was essentially, I dare to say, a kind of a juvenile kind of a movie, right? It had some silliness and some lightheartedness to the jokes and some humor that once you get the Winter Soldier, which was the Russos' first tap into Marvel, you really don't go back from how dark that movie got.
Yeah.
And so tonally, you aside from the other issues Joss was dealing with Avengers 2, you can tell every time that movie shifted into fit with that more, it wasn't comfortable for that sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that these guys work with James and his characters well enough, and the brand has established itself well enough that we don't get that tonal mismatch again. Every time Avengers 2 was just guys sitting around in a room talking, it was genius. And every time it was trying to be more like the Winter Soldier, or worse off, more just like, the trailer for the next big Avengers movie. It's where it lost me. And it's not a bad movie by any stretch. It's just, it feels like it wasn't as well put together. And I love Captain America Civil War as well, but I still think Winter Soldier is a superior film to that. And
it's a really tough call between
they're
those
really
two
good. But
yeah.
The only reason I put Civil War, and again, Civil War is great, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the only reason I put it less is that I wouldn't have called it a Captain America.
And
I don't mean that it's not. It's very much a Captain America movie, but it's and they got a lot done. But that really should have been Avengers 2.
I don't see. The thing is, I get that. Like, it's definitely a better Avengers 2 than the real
It
Avengers
really
2 was.
is. Maybe they should have just been a doubleheader. You know what I mean? Because
Like that,
you
that
need
the
the story
3.
of Avengers 2 for Captain America Civil War. But, I mean, Captain America Civil War is paced like The Dark Knight, for Christ's sakes, right?
Yeah.
That movie is dark, and it's heavy, and it's all story. There's a lot going on in that damn thing. And I don't know how if the Russo's next Avengers movie is just like that, which I would imagine it would be, I don't know how these guys fit. Like you just said, it's going to be weird. They're a little too weird to fit in that universe, as weird as it sounds. I don't know, just to me. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we don't know. We don't know if the Guardians are coming to Earth. We don't know if the Avengers are going to space. I assume the Avengers are going to space.
Well, if you're going to deal with Thanos on Earth will be too much like the parts of Thor that didn't work, and we don't need that. And I love Thor. It's just, we've seen Superman 2 before. We don't need much more of that.
Yeah, I hope that there's a little bit, like, I hope that we see a little, because the thing about the Earth stuff is especially since they go back to it again in Guardians, and they didn't need to show, the thing, growing, the extension of Ego growing up to cover. They didn't need to show that other than to plug the Dairy Queen tie-in.
Well, no, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed when I did some reading about it. One of the people stuck in that mess was Peter's grandfather, uncle, adoptive, uncle.
The character also played by Michael Rooker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, like, it does that, but I mean, like, it's not like it's made very clear in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies that it's not like Peter is lost from Earth. He can go there whenever he wants. Other aliens in this universe clearly do, because they have all of this Earth technology around for him to, put his radios and stuff together from.
The Zune was great.
This is a thing that happens, and and it ties in because on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. there are aliens coming and going all the time, and in the other Marvel movies it's implied that this happens.
Right.
But, so it's not like the idea that Ego is going to destroy the Earth is like a prominent thing in Peter's mind, and that's why we would go back there. But the thing that the Earth stuff is good for is I don't think if they had shown, I think if we had only seen Ego blowing up, like consuming other CGI planets full of people in goofy makeup, it would have, it doesn't have quite the same level of threat because you don't have it's like when you take a photo of something and you hold something else up for scale.
Right.
It's like, okay, yeah, this is, this is what this means. Here's your frame of reference for what's going on here, right?
Right. No, and you kind of need that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that there is, that if we're going to do the, Thanos is a threat to everything thing, I hope there's a little bit of, him being on. Presumably, doesn't he kind of have to be because at least one of the Infinity Stones is here?
Well, Thanos, I would say, is going to have to kill somebody that's close to one of the Avengers. I would imagine they're going to probably off somebody in Hawkeye's family.
You think that would do it?
Or someone close to Iron Man, but they've already done 2 movies about killing members of Iron Man's family, so...
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of that, and, presumably he has to come just because one of the Infinity Stones is hanging around Doctor Strange's neck.
Right, right.
So we have, if this is to be... If this is to be the movie where suddenly the magic rock things that only the fanboys care about are now the most important things in the world, then he has to at least come for that one.
Right.
Yeah, and, like Doctor Strange goes to other dimensions, he doesn't necessarily go to space.
Well, he has to attack Earth or Thor doesn't give a shit.
Right, well,
unless he's attacking, Thor's place, but,
it looks like that. Yeah, it looks like that's going down in the next one.
Yeah, it looks like Thor 3 basically has the end of the world for them.
Yeah. So that's the thoughts. Do you want to do anything else you want to say on Guardians before we talk about the trailers and such?
Did we want to talk through the end credit spoilers quickly?
Oh, okay, yeah. So
since you had to explain most of them to me, and I'm pretty well versed in this stuff, so
yeah, this is something that I really like is that the Marvel Universe bonus stuff in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is universally, it is all really, really, really deep cuts that only the most obsessively devoted of fanboys could ever possibly immediately know what it's supposed to be. And unlike some other Marvel movies that have packed in things like that, Thor 2, Iron Man 2 probably being the biggest offenders, it doesn't stop the movie to shove this stuff in and look at the audience like, you know what that is. It just shoves it all into the, as bloopers in the end credits, and I think, and it doesn't let it hurt the main movie, which I think is a smart way to do it.
It almost works as a matter of subliminal advertising now, right? Because these images are going to be ingrained in the minds of people that have no fucking idea what they mean. Yeah. And that's what I think is great. I mean, you could say everything you want about, stupid, and it's a light version of what they do in the comic, and it's ruining what I already read. But the fact that we watched an audience full of people at a Jordan's IMAX theater, I don't know if we talked about this before, everyone, but around here, furniture stores are movie theaters.
Yeah, there's a giant ass furniture emporium, and it has one of the best laser IMAX theaters.
It's
in the area.
Great.
And it's awesome.
And you have to walk through the furniture store after, of course. But anyway, another local celebrity owned, or at least they're the mascots establishment. But we're watching it. And nearly the entire theater stays for the credits on this, right? And on this one, they're really not even given a bone of, and look, there's Iron Man. Or look at this. No one that's recognizable to them is showing up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's and to be fair, it's not like the only thing that's interesting about these is the fact that it's a reference to the comics. It's the things that they're teasing are interesting. Like, if we want to get into them, the first one is the bad guys that they teased us with, the Sovereign. The gold-skinned race of genetically superior people. Which is great, by the way, is that you have this is like even like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies have been really reticent to like show us the Klingons or something, or to figure out what the aliens should look like. And Guardians of the Galaxy just says, no, fuck it. One of our main planets is people in gold body paint with gold wings. Why the
Yep.
fuck not? That's what we're dealing with. And so they in order to distract everyone from making the obvious guess that Ego was the villain of our movie, they said that no, Aisha and the Sovereign are our bad guys. And in the comics, Aisha is the female counterpart to Adam Warlock, who was an absolutely massive character in, the brief period of time that Jim Starlin was writing all the cosmic stuff at Marvel.
Right.
And Adam Warlock is, I don't know that there's another way to describe him other than he was like orange-skinned space Jesus.
Right. Yeah, no,
Like, that was,
that's basically when you reminded me who Adam Warlock was, it clicked, and then I had to go back and
yeah.
read, and I'm like, yeah, no, orange skin space Jesus, that makes sense.
Yeah, he was for a time like he's the main good guy who eventually prevails over Thanos in the Infinity War comic.
Right.
Yeah, because at the time they were printing that, Adam Warlock was a huge character, whereas if they do it now, I don't think the end of those two movies is going to be Thanos is defeated by guy who you've never heard of that just showed up.
No, Adam Warlock is just maybe they'll pull what they pulled with what's his head? Jewel Head.
Yeah.
Did you just say it?
No, I didn't. What did you mean?
In Avengers 2.
Oh, the Vision.
Yeah, maybe they'll pull what they pull with the Vision. You know what I mean? And have it be, oh, okay, he's kind of a main baddie for a portion of the movie, and now he's helping, or something. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, so our ending spoiler for this is that Aisha, having failed to destroy the Guardians of the Galaxy, is now obsessed with doing so, and announces that she is making a new super person to fight them, and she has a big cocoon and says she's going to call it Adam. So, cue, half, and it gets this big musical sting, cue half of the theater that has remained, because everyone remains for the Marvel movies now, going, what the fuck? Well, like one or two guys in the theater go, all right,
yay!
Yeah! it's that guy. So that's cool. And, I was happy to see that. The other one is more of a nested twist, because we mentioned earlier in the movie that there's this whole subplot about why Yondu is not part of his crew of Ravagers, or not part of the other Ravagers. And, our big sort of bittersweet ending is, after Yondu has sacrificed himself, he gets his funeral, and the other Ravagers actually do show up, having now, found out, oh, he actually tried to do the right thing at the end.
Yeah, that was the sequence that really kicked my ass, because Cat Stevens' father and son, man.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
I knew that was on the soundtrack, and when I saw them kick that up, I'm just like, yep, I'm not going to be able to deal with this.
Yeah, no, that's there's a lot of personal connection to that for us, and I would assume that's one of those like generational songs. That we you and I are not the only guys in their 30s with complicated relationships with their father who need to take a minute for that song.
Right, but that I do not know the last time that has happened to me with a movie.
Yeah.
And so it was really impressive that it got me that much.
Yeah. Well, also it's the use of it because it's a funeral. It's a sort of happy, sort of sad ending.
I mean, you just went through the whole ego thing, and then you've got Yondu actually turning out to not be a piece of shit. You know what I mean? And now he's dead.
And they're setting off fireworks during it. It's a big deal. Yeah, we're all James Gunn's brother being really, really happy when that shows up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That guy's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he's good. It seems like they know they've actually got an asset in him.
Is he still Rocket's stand-in and motion capture guy?
Yeah, he's Rocket's stand-in and motion capture guy.
I think that's awesome. The special features of the first movie of him running around in the blue suit as Rocket were hysterical.
Yes, they were. Oh shoot. What was it? Oh yeah. So anyway, we learn this extra detail about Yondu being an exiled member of what are space pirates, basically, because he runs into two of his old associates that he recognizes in the other captains of the Ravagers, and it's Sylvester Stallone and an actor whose name I didn't catch, but Sylvester Stallone as a guy with interesting shoulder pads, and another guy whose like skin is made of crystals.
And let me say, for the maybe 4 minutes of screen time Sylvester Stallone has in this, when did he come back? Like he seemed no. I mean, I know when he's come back, but he seemed to walk onto the screen with a swagger and a voice that's like, "Oh yeah, no, I've been doing these things still for like all the time."
Yeah,
You know, like it wasn't like a big deal. Like, oh wow, it's like no, Sylvester Stallone. It's what, you didn't know that he's just always been in this universe? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, Stallone's here. So seeing the weird shoulder pads on Stallone's character and then the crystal guy, I got the sense of like, oh, I know what's going on here. And then at the end, we have the other Ravager captains come back, and we see a couple more, and we see Ving Rhames.
Awesome.
Ving Rhames is there wearing interesting, what do you call the two strap belts that go across your chest? That's just like a harness.
I think that'd be the best way to call it, is a harness.
Yeah, he's wearing like a
looks
body
like he's
harness.
about to lift a refrigerator.
Yeah, he's just a big fucking guy, and Michelle Yeoh is there.
Yep.
In a cameo that supposedly went over gangbusters in China. Imagine that.
Awesome.
A big actress to hire for what seems to be a cameo. And then in one of our ending post-credit scenes, we get Sylvester Stallone standing with the crystal guy again and talking about how, hey, isn't it interesting that, the death of Yondu brings us back together, and cut back to a bunch of different characters, including Ving Rhames and including Michelle Yeoh. Yeah, Ving Rhames' character named Charlie 27, by the way, which is what I thought. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and so it cuts back to, and there's all these other aliens hanging out, and there's a big lobster-looking guy, and Michelle Yeoh is there, and there's a talking robot helmet with the voice of Miley Cyrus,
which is hilarious.
Yeah, and they say, hey, we've got the band back together, let's go do some shit, and what's happening there is those are the original Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics.
Which is great.
In the 70s, the Guardians of the Galaxy was a comic that took place in the future of the Marvel Universe, and all of the characters were from different planets. And, like Stallone is playing a character named Starhawk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal. Ving Rhames is playing Charlie 27. That's Michael Rosenbaum as the crystal guy, named Martinex.
Yep.
And Alita, who is Michelle Yeoh, and those are the original Guardians of the Galaxy, here existing as some other team that can show up in future movies, and that's pretty great.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun. Howard the Duck is in the movie again.
Couple times.
Yeah, just a few times, just hanging out, doing stuff. Which is great. I don't know if I necessarily want them to do another Howard the Duck.
No, I think just him existing in this universe is awesome. I think if he comes along with the Guardians and shows up from time to time, that'll be perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, I think that's just like, if they do eventually want to do the thing where they like send Howard to Earth and do like a movie, okay, maybe fine, but I feel like the Howard the Duck was something that was never designed to be a movie and is now mainly known as a movie that wasn't good.
Howard the Duck is like Poochie.
Yeah.
Whenever you try to make it into a character that exists like that, that's what you end up with.
Yeah.
This Howard the Duck, I like it and I like the jokes, but it's definitely been designed to just be there quick and be Howard the Duck, right? They're not putting a lot of time into the look. It looks like Howard the Duck, but it's not, a fully rendered character existing in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a whole thing. It's enough to just have a fun cameo there. And we also have a brief glimpse of Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, and that brings us into Thor 3.
Right, which is the trailers that opened this were for Thor Ragnarok, which looks great.
Oh, it looks amazing, right down to the 80s arcade game box font on the word Ragnarok, and it just looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like that the solution thus far to fixing the Thor movies after the second one is just not very good. It's just not.
Yeah, I kind
of
like some of the third act of the second one.
Yeah.
The basically Portal the movie for the last 20 minutes was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a lesser film.
Yeah. Oh, also, we forgot to mention Stan Lee in this one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I jumped
Stan
ahead.
Lee in Guardians, which is a cameo that there's so much in this movie that's a big deal. It almost seems to pass without notice that hey, the Watchers are in the movie now.
That was awesome. And Stan Lee is telling them about all of his various cameos.
Yeah, yeah. So which is bizarre because it's. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. Stan Lee is probably not going to be with us for much longer.
Which is a goddamn shame.
It is like Stan Lee is 95, and or close to that. And at a certain point, the Marvel movies will probably outlive him. At a certain point,
Hey, one hell of a swan song that guy's getting. That's all I gotta
it
say.
is, it is, and they've like he's dialed back his convention appearances, and they've already confirmed that he's filmed like his next 4 Marvel cameos,
Ah, yes.
which should I assume that those are for Infinity War and such. In this one, for a long time, there's been a fan theory that the way to unite all of the Marvel movies permanently would be to say that Stan Lee's cameo character has actually been one guy and have it turn out to be one of the Watchers.
Oh, all right.
Pete, like, this has been a fan theory forever, is that Stan Lee at some point in one of these movies will, like, duck down an alley and turn into Uatu the Watcher and fly away, and it'll be, oh, that's why there was this guy that looked the same in all of these movies. In this one, he doesn't seem to be a Watcher himself,
But he seems to
but
be an
he's
informant to the Watchers.
well, he's definitely there listening very intently as he's telling them things, and the brief thing that we hear him say was, so anyway, in that time, I was a FedEx man.
Which was
At the end of Civil War.
yes.
At the end of Civil War with Tony
So
Stark.
they're setting up the last time the Avengers were involved is the last
Right.
thing he tells them.
Right, so, and then the Watchers pretty much depart to go watch something. Guess what they do?
Right.
And,
That's good.
Right. So the implication here seems to be that Stan Lee is if not a Watcher, is some sort of cosmic being himself, who is here, telling, because when they leave at the end, in the end credits, when we see them leave, and he says, "Hey guys, you were supposed to be my ride," he kind of goes like, "Guys, come on, I've got so many more stories to tell,"
Right.
which is bittersweet when you think that it's Stan Lee.
Yeah.
But, that's not an accident. So the implication is, I suppose, that whenever they get to the point where they say, okay, this was the last Stan Lee cameo, the idea is that he has been narrating all of this to the Watchers the whole time.
Which is cool.
Yeah, which is really something. I don't know why they didn't go and just look themselves, but it's cool. And it's cool that they're there because I'm not really sure how they're there, because those are supposed to be one of the things that belong to the Fantastic Four that they're not allowed to use.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's
Maybe
unusual.
it's just not in naming them is where the rules go in.
It could be. These do seem to be rules that are only enforced when they want them enforced.
Yeah, and I mean we all
Yeah.
saw how that turned out. So
Yeah, and I expect them to maybe they'll be in the Infinity War movies. Maybe they'll be in Thor Ragnarok. That would seem to make a certain amount of sense.
which would be cool. Hey, that was a cool switch back.
Yeah, well, Ragnarok looks great. I like that the fix to the Thor movies seems to be, for a while, Chris Hemsworth was talking about how he wasn't nuts about how the second movie turned out either, and he wished he could be funnier in those movies, and that he wished that his movies could be like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Looks like what they're going for.
Yeah, it looks like they've listened to him by saying, okay, the next Thor movie is also Guardians of the Galaxy again.
And I mean who's directing it? The guy that did
Taika
What We Do in the
Waititi.
Shadows?
Yes.
Oh, that was fan-fucking-tastic.
Taika Waititi.
Everybody watching this, we won't talk about that movie right now, but just see
Yeah.
What We Do in the Shadows. You missed it, and you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But his little Thor, the Thor gets a job, like or
Yeah.
lives in that guy's apartment. A little
Right, yeah.
fan movie was great, or a little
That was
short.
awesome.
That was an awesome, and that was all about humor. It was all
Yes.
about making this character funny, almost like almost like the Tick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I liked that sense of humor and
Yeah.
the well, we know each other from work. bit with the Hulk is
he's a
just
friend from
fucking
work.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looked and it's good because like that's you're having your actor imitate the reaction of the audience. It's like, oh hey, the Hulk. We're always glad when the Hulk is here.
Right.
Everyone likes the Hulk.
Yes.
And that this is that this is going to be a big movie. Jeff Goldblum is in it, and it looks great.
And Jeff Goldblum is in the next Jurassic World movie too.
Hell
Yay!
yeah! I'm psyched. I'm psyched. I can't wait.
Oh, it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping it's the best of the three. I mean, Kenneth Branagh's bonkers ass original Thor needed to be the way that it was. I love that movie. I know a lot of people don't. It was the first one of these to really go. I mean, it was before Guardians, right? It was the first one of these to go, there's some batshit stuff going on in this universe. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, I think the first Thor is fun. The thing is, Thor 2 seemed to think that the problem with Thor 1 was that it wasn't dark enough.
Yeah.
And that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to acknowledge that you're making, like, the first Thor is goofy, and, I remember that they changed the screening date, for Thor, the original. It was originally going to screen for press here in Boston at night. And then they moved it to a Saturday morning, to be a family screening. And then, seeing it, I kind of thought, oh, this makes a lot of sense, because unlike every other superhero movie coming out at the time, this one looked at the movie about the space Viking who needs to learn how to be a good boy so he can have his magic hammer back is a kid's movie.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and this new one looks very self-consciously like a throwback to, Flash Gordon and business like that, which is what it should be.
Well, they should have recognized from the Avengers.
Yeah.
That handling of Thor and Loki was exactly how those characters should be handled.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They were silly when they needed to be. I mean, Iron Man's a little bit, what is this, Shakespeare in the Park?
Yeah.
It was a perfect little gag because those were the bits of the original Thor that wouldn't work in the other Marvel movies. Was the bit that you were basically watching, a Shakespearean epic done by way of, space Vikings.
Right, yeah.
and that needed to be done in the first Thor movie. It needed to be that way. But you can't really have the send-up be more of that.
Yeah,
you need to dial it back. And like we're saying with the Guardians, how are they gonna saturate that into the rest of the Marvel world? They did by showing us Earth. They did some good work there. But yeah.
I want to see this of him, and I want to see all the different interactions. Supposedly, Dave Bautista is the only person in the Marvel Universe who they don't seem to tell him to shut up whenever he starts talking about the next movie.
Nice.
So he's already said, he's like, oh yeah, I've done scenes with Iron Man, it's great.
Awesome.
So cool. Good on him. That dude rocks.
He's the surprisingly just one of the best things to come out of Guardians, and there's a lot of great things.
Yeah. Well, he's such a great center for any of the scenes he's in, where he's just like this stone-faced guy who is either really excited or not moving at all.
Right.
And you can just give him any kind of deadpan line and he pulls it off. Just like,
hurts my nipples.
This gross bug lady is my new friend. It's just a description of a scene, but it's good. Or, just the little stuff off to the side. People just like, geez, Drax, you're like an old woman. And he's like, because I am wise. Which on the one hand it's a perfect Drax line, because he's genuinely wondering how he's like an old woman, but I like the fact that it's a nice touch that whatever little we know about his people culturally is that when someone tells him you're like an old woman, the first place he goes to is that this must be a compliment because old women are wise.
My father would tell the stories of impregnating my mother every year on the winter solstice. What, is this weird? You Earth people have so many hang-ups.
Yeah. It's a nice business, and he has him holding Mantis above the dirt when the planet's trying to eat them is a hell of a hero shot.
Oh yeah, and good on them for using the good old fashioned person coming out of a grave rock practical effect there.
Yeah,
it looked awesome. I love still that we talk too much about, but It just
Yeah.
this has a lot of big CGI stuff, but a lot of the cool stuff was practical in this too, and I loved it for it.
Yeah. Of course I have issues. That's my damn father.
So we were just talking about Thor, and so what else
yeah.
did we have? We've
Oh,
got
Spider-Man
Marvel's first
Homecoming.
self-owned Spider-Man movie.
Yep, made supposedly in collaboration with Sony. But I have a feeling we won't really know how this movie got made until a couple of years later. But the general sense on this one is that Marvel has agreed to help Sony with the Spider-Man movies by making the movie for them and letting Sony release it. And then we don't know how much of a veto power Sony has over anything in this movie or the rest of the use of Spider-Man.
Right.
But
Okay.
but this movie exists. It's in the Marvel universe. It seems like the most cynical version you could think of it would be Sony asking Marvel, what do we have to do to please you so that Iron Man can be in our movie so that people will come see it? And
Yeah.
that pretty much
No.
looks like the movie.
Yeah. No. That's exactly it. And it doesn't look bad.
No, it doesn't look bad.
It just we've talked about this before. Even if it's a property I like, right? The Marvel movies, I haven't gotten cynical enough yet to say that they all feel like remakes of each other, even though they do tread familiar territory.
Yeah.
But do we really need more Spider-Man? I like that Marvel has Spider-Man and they can put him in the MCU, but you know what? I kind of almost just want what they did in Civil War to be it. And now in the next movie, Spider-Man's just a character in it. I don't think we need another Spider-Man origin movie.
Well, it's not an origin movie, though.
Yeah, but it looks like they're doing some of it. You know
well,
what
no,
I mean?
it's they've apparently it's an open question if they'll even reference the Uncle Ben thing.
And that to me, maybe that's good, but it's like then why do I need a whole? I mean, okay, Spider-Man: Homecoming, cool, but everything with the Vulture, which fucking awesome, Michael Keaton. I love everything I see him doing and saying, but it all just looks like the Doctor Octopus stuff from the second movie.
Yeah,
I mean, and you can talk about other franchises that have handled this differently, okay, but Batman Begins and The Dark Knight have villains and Batman, but both movies have Batman dealing with very different things with these villains. Spider-Man can do more than just, beat up on an upset guy that's hurting New York. You know what I mean? I get it that, they're trying to make it feel familiar, but it feels like everything that Raimi already did better in Spider-Man 2.
That I think, and again, at a certain point, I think that much like with the Superman movies, eventually, I think you kind of, especially if you are someone who, we ourselves are getting up there in years, Chris.
Yeah.
Especially, and not just, I don't want to do the thing where it's like, oh, we're in our 30s, we're so old, ha ha ha. But
no, but it's true. I mean, we're now watching the third iteration of the current generation of Spider-Man.
Right, yeah, and I think that much as at a certain point, the only way to move forward with Superman movies, and there hasn't really been a good new Superman movie to test this theory with, but eventually you just kind of...
Yeah, Superman Returns is just a lesser Christopher Reeve Superman movie, so yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, no, Superman Returns has raised a lot in my estimations, but like in...
I fucking love that movie, but I'm at the low end of the curve for that.
It's good, but it's very much a tribute film to those other movies.
Yes.
And I like that about it, but if eventually, since the current DC universe seems to be a lost cause, but if eventually we are to have more Superman movies, and realistically we will, eventually, not just the people who grew up with them, but the culture as a whole, kinda has to look at the Christopher Reeve Superman movies the way that biblical movies look at Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments and say, yes, okay, those are frozen in amber, perfect representatives of their time. We're never gonna do that again.
Right.
You're just gonna have to accept that future versions of those stories are going to do something different, and they'll probably never be as iconic as that, but, maybe something interesting will happen with them. I feel like that's what, I'm kind of have to tell myself to do about Spider-Man, because like Spider-Man is my favorite superhero ever. It's my favorite superhero comic. I love Spider-Man forever. And the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, the first two, I genuinely believe are the best superhero movies outside of the Christopher Reeve Superman.
I agree.
They're just like, I love the Marvel Universe movies. They're all great. Not one of them is as good as Spider-Man 2.
Well, and remember, Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 1 were made with nothing to base it on other than really
Yeah.
this Christopher Reeve Superman. We're either going to be like those or we're
Yeah.
going to be like the Tim Burton Batman movies. There wasn't really much else to do.
Right.
And instead it was its own thing.
Yeah.
And the Marvel Cinematic Universe feels the most like those movies.
Yeah, yeah.
The shtick they're going for feels the most like the tone that Raimi was going for. Now, the fact that they are finally casting Spider-Man at the right age, I like a lot.
Yeah. It's I feel like I'm gonna just eventually need to just say, okay, I know going in, like the previous two Spider-Man movies, the Amazing Spider-Man ones, they were cynically made, and I hated that they didn't let Sam Raimi make Spider-Man 4 in order to do a shitty reboot that was,
but
run by idiots.
He sabotaged his own series because he was so pissed.
Right, but I wish
Spider-Man
that...
3 is still not a terrible movie, but it's a very angry man making that film, right?
Right. I look at this and I have a feeling I'm trying to engage the new Spider-Man Homecoming on its own, and where I think I'm having an issue with some of it is what I like about where they're going with it is like the first, I firmly believe the best trailer for this has been the very first one that they did, where there was almost no Spider-Man. The first domestic one had almost no Spider-Man stuff, and it was mostly about how this is a contemporary millennial high school movie where the guy happens to be Spider-Man.
They got that very much right.
Yeah, I like that, and more importantly, I want that because, if there's an answer to why do we need a Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so far, all of the characters are, for the most part, the main characters are all different variations of, middle-aged white dads.
Right.
And that's, not necessarily wrong with that. That they're good characters, but, there hasn't been a teenage hero, which is a whole other thing and a whole other thing to explore, and it excites me that they seem to be deliberately looking at this and saying, I love the Sam Raimi movies dearly, and I love the fact that Sam Raimi is, sensibility-wise from, a similar generation to us, and went and made not only a Spider-Man movie that was nostalgic and high schoolish, but was built around the 60s sensibilities of that character, and the 80s and 70s sensibilities of himself as a young man. I think Star-Lord is enough in the Marvel Universe of a representation of guys who miss the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, good point.
Yeah. And I hope that, that they look at Spider-Man and that they don't make... As much as I love that the Marvel Cinematic Universe enthusiastically kisses the ass of Silver Age and Bronze Age comic fans, my hope is that I am completely unable to relate to Spider-Man.
You make a really good point.
Not in terms of a character. Like, I hope I can, relate to the topic of it, but I hope that, I hate the music score in this movie, but that people who are 12 and 13 years old now, it's perfectly contemporary to them.
You hit something I wasn't even thinking about. You're 100% right. Because Raimi's vision of Peter Parker and the things that he deals with on a daily basis didn't seem to exist in the late 1990s time frame the movie was being made in.
Yeah.
It was a comic book fantasy time capsule version of this is what boys and girls react to each other like, and this is what school is like. You know what I mean? Whereas this, you're right, it looks like they're just sticking it into Peter Parker is going to school in high school right now.
Yeah, well, because I think Spider-Man is one of the comparatively few heroes that you really do have to, if you're going to do him in the proper way of, the teenager. Being an adult doesn't change that much generation to generation. You eventually, especially if, like Peter Parker, you're, a middle-class white guy, your life is going to be pretty similar generation to generation. Whereas life of a teenager
is very different.
Night and day. Our teenage life was not our father's teenage life and whatnot. And, I hope that this movie, gives a younger generation a Spider-Man that belongs to them. That being said, the trailers that have come out after that first one that was aimed so much at, look at Peter's friends, look at his decidedly not all white, because that's not New York anymore, high school and social circle.
Right.
Look at the, look at this, radio Disney music that we've got on the soundtrack. That was very encouraging. The trailers post that have mostly been focused on, Iron Man is also in the movie.
You're reminding us that it's a Marvel MCU movie. Yeah.
And reminding us that, hey, here's one more chance for you to see Robert Downey Jr. before even he gets too expensive for this.
Right.
And also here are, big, previs action sequences of Spider-Man holding things together with webs and stuff. And it's like, I'm sure it'll all look very good, but it looks mostly like stuff that I've seen.
That's exactly my reaction, and that's a positive thing in that I really like how Spider-Man looks on screen. So seeing him do more Spider-Man-y stuff, I'm on board for.
Right.
But what is it really going to do that's new? And that's the argument that I think people that are getting cynical about the Marvel movies, which I'm not one of them yet, but are saying is that why go and see them when it's just the same movie with a different character in it? Mm-hmm. And I worry that the Amazing Spider-Man was too soon of a reboot anyway.
Yeah.
And I would have rather had this not have to happen as another reboot. And, you really can't. Tobey Maguire's too fucking old to be playing the character when they made it the first time. So he's definitely too old now. But,
if I had it to do, if this was my decision, if I was Kevin Feige and I wanted to get, like, the biggest pop that, like, that would be what I would want, and also, like, wanted to, like, really get a big reaction from the audience, I would have just rehired Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, and just, like I said, and don't even do its own movie. Just have the end of Civil War, have Tobey Maguire show up as fucking Spider-Man, and now Spider-Man's in the MCU.
And, retroactively make the Raimi movies the first ones of this cycle. Yeah.
Right, and then make us a Spider-Man 4 if you want at some point. But, and again, the kid, I think, I loved him in Civil War. You know what I mean? He did what everybody didn't like about the Raimi movies, and he had the cynical, Peter Parker Spider-Man that makes fun of you and makes quirky jokes. All of that was spot on. It's just, why?
Yeah, and well, the thing of it is that the trailers that they've been showing are mainly aimed at a multiplex audience and aimed at telling people, hey, it's Spider-Man Marvel style with big action, which is cool, but like I've seen the big action. What I'm curious about is, like all of these, is this will live and die as to what the context of those scenes are.
Yes.
Like if the like the Vulture, I like the fact that the Vulture's suit has like the neck frill and has Vulture feet.
Yes.
Like
he very well could end up being Take the Cake from Ego as our best villain, because he damn sure sounds menacing.
Yeah,
the words from the trailers that he says are fucking scary, and seeing Michael Keaton be evil is awesome.
Yeah, and look, it's Spider-Man versus Batman.
It's awesome.
Well, cool
Spider-Man versus Batman with carrying some of Birdman's problems, right?
Yeah. I kind of, and I do like the meta level of Michael Keaton doing a movie that, this sort of super pretentious movie that's all about how shitty the blockbuster superhero thing is, and then doing, a version of that, like, afterwards.
I think it's fucking great.
Yeah, that's like, they know what they're doing with that kind of fun meta casting. If he is an interesting bad guy, if he's got something, if there's some kind of cool, novel thing about why he's the Vulture and what he's getting up to, then we've got a different story. Right now, we don't know. And, like, the trailers for the Sam Raimi movies were all action, but you also knew that they were keeping right to the comics. So whenever the Green Goblin showed up in that one, it's like, oh, well, I know what the Green Goblin's deal is, so I know what the context is here. This is clearly a different version of the Vulture.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what his deal is. They're playing really coy as to who all of Peter's friends are. Like, everyone just kind of assumes that Zendaya is playing Mary Jane, but no
Right.
one is saying so, which is, novel. Since, this would, if that's who she's playing, she's the first, non-white woman to play Mary Jane, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The big Asian kid in the movie, for example, is Ned Leeds, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who's
Cool,
like a
cool,
big
cool.
square-jawed white guy in the comics. So, this is all novel, and I want to see that. I want to see how they'll eventually deal with the Daily Bugle.
Right. Is it going to
Because,
be an internet magazine or some shit now, or?
I don't know, like, even in the Sam Raimi movies, we're kind of pushing it that, like, a small New York newspaper would still be that kind of powerful media-wise in that movie.
Yeah, no, true
at that
statement.
at that point in history. But, I hope so. And also, they have a ready-made excuse in they're just never going to cast that role better than J.K. Simmons, and they shouldn't even try.
Why don't they just cast him again?
I mean,
I'd
they
be
could.
for it. I'd be fine with it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. That's down the road anyway. They're doing him as a pretty young kid in this. I mean, like the title seems to have a double meaning, right? Like it's Homecoming in that, hey, he's in the Marvel universe, aren't we being funny? But like when it turns out that the movie is actually all about him trying to get to the homecoming dance and having to fight the Vulture, like that's not going to be a surprise.
Exactly.
To me, like that
Exactly.
that seems to be the point of the title. But it looks pretty cool, and I hope it's good. But yeah, I'm having to temper my expectations for that one a little more than I thought I otherwise would, and I'm realizing that no, maybe it's probably smart to do that because
It
I
might
already
not
got
be a movie for us.
yeah, I already got my Spider-Man movie, and the idea that the Marvel thing is that there are worse things in the world than the biggest entertainment company on earth deciding that there are people that can be serviced other than the 36-year-old white man who is going to see their movie anyway.
True, true.
So I hope that goes well, and I mean. Hey, if it's not, I can always just, sit and enjoy anticipation for Justice. I'm sorry, I can't even say it.
Were you attempting to mention the fact that there's a Justice movie, Justice League movie? Yeah, we
Right,
care
right.
about that.
Yeah, there's a Justice League movie coming.
I
What
I can't even.
you...
It no. I told you before. I'm not even gonna fucking see it. I'm done,
You're not like psyched to find out how Cyborg fits in.
dude. All I did, like I said, I won't even see Suicide Squad. I can't do it.
But you've got to see Suicide Squad so that you can get in on all the jokes with everybody, man.
No.
This is Katana. She's got my back. I would advise not being killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its enemies.
Oh Jesus.
Oh god, it's so bad. It's so bad. You have to see it and get on the same page, man.
Sure, why not? That won't be a waste.
Everyone else has suffered through Suicide Squad.
That
You
won't
don't get
be a
to do
waste of
better.
my time.
Well, look, like if it's on, watch it.
Sure, sure.
So that because look, when they eventually start making more Batman stuff, because they are going to force Ben Affleck to do this, whether he realizes it's a bad idea now or not.
He was still fine. If there's a good movie to write with him in it, I'll watch it.
Why did you say that name?
Yeah, again, like I said, if there was a good writing,
All right. We're coming up on the hour and 45 minute
we're
mark.
coming up
so
an hour and 45. So long and short of it,
pre-editing.
I think Thor 3 will be great.
Yeah.
I think
Thor 3,
that's
I think looks good.
it's pretty much a guarantee that that's great. And I think
Yeah.
Spider-Man, we have to wait and see. I don't think there's any world where it will be bad, but I think
Mhm.
it could be just meh. Maybe.
Yeah. I think I have like I'll say again, it is very possible that Spider-Man: Homecoming will end up being the first Marvel movie that I look at and go, You know what? This one was like it's not one that I will watch for a bunch of fun again and again and again. But hey, there's like 15-year-olds for whom it's like the greatest thing they ever seen, and I almost kind of want that.
There's a
You
place
know,
for that.
yeah. I hope that there is that. It's sort of like how like did you watch through all the way through Luke Cage?
No, not yet.
I thought, like, narrative-wise, Luke Cage is the most uneven of the Marvel Netflix shows because
Even
it's
more
not.
uneven than Iron Fist.
Oh, Iron Fist isn't uneven at all. It all sucks.
Oh, okay. Just
Yeah,
checking.
yeah. No, Iron Fist is perfectly even in that it's all garbage. Whereas Jessica Jones was pretty much all good, and Daredevil was mostly good, but in some ways really not. Luke Cage, the first season is real. I think is really good. Suffers narratively, but the stuff that works in it that even I can say, oh wow, yeah, that really works. A lot of my friends who are not exactly me in relation to Luke Cage, if
Mm-hmm.
you take my meaning,
Yes.
right? Yeah, came away from Luke Cage, saying, holy shit, wow, this means a lot, and that they're, the Luke Cage is a show that does not give two fucks if white people like it, and I was really into that about it.
That's cool.
So I hope that I mean, it's almost to the extent that I would call it heavy-handed, because there's a lot of it where it's like, hi, this is the conversation where we're going to talk about black pulp fiction writers.
Huh.
And a lot of a lot of historicity about that. And it's like, wow, that I want to call that heavy-handed like writing style, but on the other hand, no other show is heavy-handed about exactly that.
Right. And I mean,
You know?
it so much of the rest of geek culture and culture in general gets their heavy-handed thing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So why not have something that just gets to be completely into it? You know what I mean? And not
yeah.
into it in a way that the oddness of like Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, right? Which is heavy-handed and is exploitative, but that's kind of the point, you know?
I used to think of that as like sort of like an exploitation sort of movie, but subsequently, people for whom that movie meant a lot
Well,
more to
that's what I
them
mean.
than it did to me, kind of turned me around and said, no, actually, this is what's being referenced here, and I'm like, oh, okay,
right?
wow,
And shouldn't they get their movie too? You know what
yeah,
I mean? That's
yeah, exactly. I like that about it. So I hope that Spider-Man: Homecoming is being made for kids who are as old as Peter Parker, and that it's not constantly bending over backwards to get an old fart Spider-Man fan like me to like it. I
that's a really
genuinely
good
hope
point.
that.
They have enough money and enough of the screen used up in this to really start branching out that way.
Yeah.
To kind of do what Lucas's argument for the shitty Star Wars prequels was. No, seriously. I
Yeah.
mean
No.
you can't fault that argument because there are some children who that shit means a lot.
Oh
And
yeah.
the awesome cartoon shows they've made based on that mythos make a good case for it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So good on them.
There's a whole generation that does not hate Jar Jar Binks.
Right, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
my
there's a
wife likes Jar Jar Internet, so send your
yeah.
hate mail here.
Right, yeah. But I mean, like, not just in the sense of doesn't hate him, but doesn't know that hating him was some kind of big deal. For them, Jar Jar Binks is like Max Rebo. Why
Right,
is there a blue elephant in Return of the Jedi? Because it's
right.
fun. That's why.
Now we really went off on a tangent there, but that's
No,
okay.
that's fine. Well, that's okay. All right. So hey guys, this has been another episode of the Chipman Brothers Tangent Podcast. We really hope you enjoy it. I don't know if we'll be up on iTunes by the time this goes. If
Oh, I
we
hope
are,
so.
please leave a review. Please do some sharing. Wherever you see this posted, post comments so that my brother can read them,
Ah, yes,
because
yes.
he
I
really
need to hear what you think.
Chris likes having the comments and stuff. As do I. I think I'm not going to hold a promise to this, but I'm thinking of once an episode has been up for like a week to 2 weeks on the regular service, I will post the YouTube version thereof.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that people can view the old ones in a different way. Until then, thank you folks very much for listening. Please, like, share, subscribe, follow the RSS feed, send this to your friends, post it on Facebook and Twitter. Just let everyone know that if you like this, that this is a thing they should be listening to. And, thank you so much. Check out the Movie Bob Patreon, patreon.com/moviebob1. The reason that I get to do side projects like this is because of the patronage of people contributing to that. So please kick in a few bucks there if you can, if you want to hear more. Chris, do you want to throw anything into the end here?
Yes. As always, I've been Taserface, and thank you for coming along on the tangent.
All right, thank you guys very much. We out.